think it's at 7, so we can start with our group here, and as people jump in, we'll just make sure that they are welcome into the webinar. Welcome to everybody. We are excited to do this training with you on social, digital, and media for your organizations, for your fairs, and for your different events that you are hosting throughout the year. We are going to kick it off by having Fran kick us off. So I will let you jump in and then we can get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad to provide this opportunity to you. Just a couple of quick household items or quick items. For those of you that are aware of it, we will be doing a judging clinic next Saturday it'll be taking place at the Massachusetts building. It will be on judging on jellies, jams, and vegetables. It's a level 1 judging clinic, so please join us for that. If you're interested, please reach out to me. If your fair is interested in a pull-up banner, that will be advertising all other fairs as well as your own, and also for connection to our Mass Grown map, which will have connection to all local farms. Please reach out to me. I'd like to get those out to all the farms. And also, if you know other people that want to join us for our June 12th session for this, please, again, let us know. So I hope you enjoy this. And again, thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Okay. We will get started and we'll just start with some introductions to our team. I just wanted to preface the presentation by letting you all know that if you have questions, there is a question box. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a Q&A button. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop any Q&A there. We will likely wait until the end to answer those questions, but please drop them in as they come to mind so that we can make sure that we're covering them all at the conclusion of the presentation. And if you think of anything afterwards, you're always welcome to pass along questions and we can include them at the end as well. I'm Bianca Hansen. I'm our Director of Creative Services. I run most of our social media campaigns here, organic campaigns for our different clients across industries, including our friends at MDAR, of course. We also work within all different areas of digital marketing, influencer marketing, events, and graphic design and branding. I will pass it over to Erica, who runs our PR and media and is going to cover that in this presentation. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Berglund. I am a senior account manager at Issues Management Group, and I work across industries supporting our firm's crisis, government affairs, real estate, and healthcare clients. I leverage a lot of my background in public relations and deliver on strategic and media objectives, but today I'm looking forward to talking all about media relations and how it can help you all. And I can kick it over to Ryan to introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan D'Orazio, the Director of Paid Digital Media here at IMG. I work on Mass Grown's account and their paid efforts with social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram, along with paid search, Google Ads, and programmatic placements. And very happy to be on this call to help guide you through the paid process. And Jamie, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Caponigro, and I'm a graphic design and creative specialist at IMG. So I get to work with Bianca and Ryan very closely on all of our digital accounts, especially the ones that specialize in branding and graphic design. And with that, I'll kick it back over to Bianca to get us started.
So there's going to be a lot of information that we cover within the presentation. So just again, please drop any Q&A that you have. We are happy to answer or try to answer any questions that come up. I'm going to get started by covering social media, pretty much all of the basics and best practices we'd recommend. Of course, there's a lot more to social. So again, if you think of anything, we're happy to touch on it as best we can. And then we'll be covering media relations with Erica, paid digital with Ryan, and branding best practices and just some Kickstarter ideas on how you could get started with branding for your organizations at the end with Jamie. We're going to start with social. Social, of course, is going to be kind of scattered throughout this as well, throughout the whole presentation. But I'm going to focus on organic social and how you can basically start your social media strategies for your fairs and events. We can get started by walking through some social media basics and fast facts. So just wanted to give you all an idea, and you might already be aware of some of these statistics, but I think it is pretty startling to really look at the numbers. On social media, as of 2024, the reported numbers are estimated to be 5.17 billion total social media users worldwide. This, of course, is a massive number, and a large chunk of that is in the United States. Unsurprising to probably most of you, because you likely have an account yourself. The average person has over 6 different social networks that they use, and it's pretty interesting to think about, but there are a lot of platforms that you wouldn't necessarily think of as social media that are considered social media. So we're not going to get into all of them, but we're going to get into the ones that we feel are the most heavily used and most relevant for your audiences and for your potential attendees, of course. And one of the things that is really important to note is that most users of social media, they're using social all day long, but maybe in small increments of time. So we really only have small windows to catch people's attention. So when we're thinking about content, when we're walking through this presentation, we really want to think about how we're best capturing attention when people are online, even if it is for a really short window. The amount of time that people spent on social has actually decreased in the past year, down to 143 minutes a day. It seems like it's still a pretty big number, but you know, this is again also just the average. So there are plenty of people who are spending a lot more time, less time, and we really want to make sure we're capturing people within the time that they are online. Kind of in association with that our first touch point, there are over 5 billion social media users' identities. What this basically means is that over 60% of the population has created at least one social media account. So while the average person might use 5 different accounts, or at least have 5 different accounts, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of your audience does. Their most used platforms, though, are Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Facebook and Instagram are definitely the platforms that we are going to focus on the most, because they are the easiest to get engagement on. They take the least amount of time for content creation, and they are also most likely where your attendees and vendors and other people that you work with are going to be. So we are going to get into the specifics of each of those platforms. But before we do that, we're going to touch on why social media is important to take advantage of. Of course, social media, organic social media, is free. So it makes sense to use it where you can, understanding that everyone's capacity and what you can do on social media is different. We all have different times. Maybe your volunteers are working on your social media accounts. Maybe you just don't have the time to balance every social media account available. That's why we are really encouraging on focusing on the platforms you do have the time, you do have the skill sets to focus on, because quality over quantity, as they say, and I think that you can repurpose a lot of content on some of these platforms. But we use social media to establish a voice and a presence online, to really get people aware of who you are, what you offer, and what exciting things they can look forward to once they're coming to attend your events. We also use it to share timely information, sometimes not so exciting information. So we'll share upcoming events, dates, times, how people can get tickets, parking information, weather delays. If there's a closure for some reason, that's something that you would share online, because when people come to visit your website, that's something that they are going to want to look for. And we'll share those things in a variety of different ways, but it is important for those same day, especially updates, to share them online where people would be tagging you or looking before they're heading to your event. And just generally, of course, we use social media to increase attendance at events. So if you are looking for ways to just bring people in, capture attention for next year, this year, you want them to share, that's what we use social media for. There are many, many platforms that we can use. Some of them, of course, are not quite as user-friendly. Some of them are not really, relevant to your space and what you're doing. So the ones we're going to focus on today are Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, now known as X. And we'll walk through each of these individual platforms. The first, and what I feel is likely the most important for your events and fairs, would be Facebook. I think Facebook is great for any sort of event because there are Facebook event features. It's also easier to share links on Facebook than a lot of other platforms. So Facebook just gives us a lot more to do. There are a lot more options on where you can link, what you can link, how we can share, and how we can sign up for things actively on the platform. So when it comes to Facebook, it is the #1 used social media platform as well. So we want to make sure when we're setting up a social media page, whether you already have one or you are looking to establish a new page, it's really important to fully update your profile. Sometimes we'll just set up an account and pick the easiest username and just kind of leave it. What we really want to do, though, is go into that About section and think of it as if someone's searching for you online, what are they looking for? So within your bio, you'll want to include everything there is to know about you, important links to your website, to other relevant pages that people might need to find information on. Of course, your location, specific location, because when people are visiting you, they are visiting an exact location, not just like a region. So that's something else to keep in mind, to sharing exact locations. Contact information, so if somebody's looking for more information on being a vendor at your fair or just attending, you want to make sure that your contact information is fully up to date. Now, that doesn't have to be, your personal information. If you have a general fair email, that would be what you could use here. It could also be a phone number if you don't use an email, or vice versa. As long as there is an active form of contact information that you are using regularly, that's all that is really important here. And I also just wanted to note that it's important to keep this in mind all year long. So if you aren't necessarily handling this account all year long, passing it over to the next person who would be handling it is important, so that they are seeing things even if they are out of season for the following season. People look for responsiveness on social media, and they, don't necessarily take kindly to really long response times. So we often try to always have somebody checking, at least every, a couple times a week, just to make sure that they're responding in a timely manner. We use Facebook to reach audiences of all ages. Facebook is really great for reaching pretty much all of your active audience, especially decision makers in homes, people who are driving themselves to events. I think you're hitting most of your audience on Facebook. You're going to get a lot of, if you share your event as an event on Facebook, you can get a lot of attendee interest. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have people sign up for your event on Facebook directly, but at least we can have people sharing, trying to get the events in front of their audiences. If you set up a Facebook event under the actual events category on Facebook, if people can mark as interested, and then within that event page, you can add the ticketing links and other relevant links. And it will show that that person's interested in the event to all of their individual audiences. So it's just a really easy, organic way to show more people what you're all about and that the event's even happening. And I think there isn't necessarily a timeline that you need to do this by. I think as soon as you know the dates for your events and you're ready to share, you should get it up sooner than later. So it's better to, share it a month or two in advance as opposed to the week before. You're able to capture more attention that way, and it gives the Facebook algorithm and feed time to really push it out in front of your audience. And one of the things that Ryan, my paid counterpart here, will touch on is boosting posts to reach more users. So we can put a little bit of spend behind posts that are really, we feel might be impactful, and we can reach more users that way. And we would do the same thing on Instagram. As many of you know, they are connected, so you can run campaigns on Facebook and Instagram concurrently so that you're reaching people in both places. So for Instagram is definitely more of a visual platform. And so when we talk about Instagram, we really like to focus on the fact that it is very visual. So when you're sharing to Instagram, you want to think about how people are looking at your account and how they're perceiving the content that you're posting. We really like to focus on pictures and videos that fit appropriately to the platform. So we're always looking to share in a way that is the most attention grabbing. So instead of sharing a landscape photo, for example, you could share a photo and crop it to a square, which is what most of us kind of think of when we think of Instagram. But you can also do what they call a portrait image, which would be a 4:5 photo ratio. Again, Jamie will touch on that at the end so that you're understanding kind of what that would look like. But just making sure you're editing photos and videos so that things fit right, tagging your location, and using trending sounds. We'll touch on this too in the TikTok section. Using music and sounds that are performing really well is important because it can help you reach a wider audience. And also tagging relevant industry and media accounts is important. So if you want to think about the vendors that are coming to your fairs, are they on social media? Are they active? Do they have a really engaged following? If you tag them and they share your post, whether it's to their stories or their page, or they just engage with your post at all, it's going to flag to Instagram that that post is deemed worthy of getting more engagement, and it will push it out in front of more people, specifically within that person's audience and within the audience that you have actively. But it will help you to grow, and it will help to just get your event in front of more people. And then on Instagram, this is kind of unique to the platform. You're going to want to use hashtags that are related to your post. While hashtags aren't, I would say they aren't as effective as they once were, they are still effective. So using niche hashtags that are relevant to your event, your neighborhoods that you're in, the specific offerings that you're having at your fairs, that's where we want to think about how hashtags can work, but not getting so specific that nobody would be searching for those terms. So just think about what you look for when you're looking for new content and sharing and choosing hashtags in that way. So if it's an interesting like event that you're having, maybe it is a contest that some people will be judging, you can use tags like agricultural fair, agricultural contests, and then include your neighborhood within those tags as well, so that people are finding you that are in the right areas. TikTok is definitely not for everyone. And in fact, as many of you may have heard, it is pretty controversial. We are still able to use TikTok here. So if you choose to use TikTok, we would just suggest that you get familiar with recording video on your phones. TikTok is definitely not a high production platform, so you don't need a video camera, you don't need a video crew. All you need is your phone and your video function on your phone. The videos can be like a compilation of many short videos put together. It could be one longer video. Maybe it's an interview. Maybe it's just you walking around, panning to different parts of the fair. It can be 15, 30, or 60 seconds, and it can just be as simple as you want. So if you just sit down and take some quick videos of different individuals who will be working at the fair. Maybe it's videos of different highlights, different contests that will be there, different animals people will be able to see, just different offerings that you have. These can all be 1 or 2 seconds long, and you can just work within TikTok to edit them. They will even edit video for you. So if you just want to play around with it, you can go into the platform and see what that would look like. And again, similar to Instagram, taking advantage of trending sound is key on TikTok. So looking for what's really popular and seeing how you can fit into that content bucket. That's really important for getting your content out there. The one thing that I do caution with TikTok, whenever we work with a client who's interested in being on TikTok, is that it's harder to reach regional audiences. I think with TikTok, it tends to push content out to much larger audiences all across the states and across the world in a lot of cases. So just thinking about your content and making sure that you're sharing and mentioning the locations, because location tagging is a little different on their platform, just so that you're trying to reach your areas to the best of your ability where you can. Twitter is another controversial platform, as many of you have probably been made aware just from the news in the past couple of years. It changes all the time. Twitter is not a platform that we would say you absolutely need to be on. I think it's a more news-centric platform. So if you're using X, you will want to use it for quick updates on events, activities. You could share links. You can repost thought leaders within your industry. That could be, media personalities. It could be a reporter. It could be a news station. It could be an influencer in your area who just happens to have a TikTok or a Twitter presence. Sorry. And that could just be a way to get in front of their audiences if you're sharing their content. You could share media highlights. You could share media spots that you were mentioned in. That's a great way to use X as well. And you can repost from partners who will be at your fair. You can repost from different vendors, attendees who might happen to tag you on Twitter. You can absolutely repost there, and you can weigh in on trending topics within your space, whether that's a topic that's trending within your specific region, or that's a topic that is trending that's very specific about, one of the types of events that you have at your fair, whether that's some sort of an interesting agricultural spot about vegetables, or it's about animals, or it's about, I think that there's a lot that, sorry, I think I just got muted for a second. I'm not sure what happened. But there's a lot that you can do with X so that you can get in front of different people and thought leaders in your space. And so while we don't necessarily need to be on every platform, when it comes to social media, you definitely should not put all of your eggs in one basket. We recommend being on at least a couple of different platforms. I think the easiest ones to kind of transfer from one to another would be Facebook and Instagram, absolutely. But you can also, if you're doing a lot with video, you could be on Instagram and TikTok, and you could share Reels and TikTok videos. You can repurpose content from one platform to another, and you can share graphics, which we'll touch on at the end, on all different platforms, but resizing them for each space so that they're doing the best they can. So the real question is how to get started, and how can we make sure that we are building our presence out as best that we can. So ways to grow engagement. I think when it comes to engagement, we really want to see people commenting on your posts, liking them, sharing them to their stories, tagging you in their content when they're at your fairs and events. The way to start growing with engagement, and I will say it is a long game. So starting, the year before, months before your fair actually takes place is important, because you want to get in front of people sooner than later so that they're ready when they're at your event. They're ready to tag you. They're ready and excited to share that they're there, and they're looking to engage with you directly. You want to like their posts, comment on their posts. That includes vendors who will be at your fair as well. So if you're getting tagged before, months before a fair that somebody will be attending, it could even be a local farmer, an individual. Just sharing that content to your own account is key to get more people to start tagging you. So when others see that you're engaged, they're more likely to tag you and try to engage with you and your content. Following relevant accounts is very specific to Instagram. I think when it comes to following pages, you can like pages as a page on Facebook as well, but specifically on Instagram, following relevant accounts from your towns and cities, media individuals, that could be reporters, journalists, people that are, writing about your areas, following people who are advocates for your fairs. So if there's somebody that tags you frequently, you could follow them. You can follow vendors that are going to be at your fairs. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, which is following people who are very relevant and who are active online. Following accounts that are inactive and that haven't posted in a year, it's not like helpful to your engagement. That being said, if it's an organization that you are tied to, absolutely you can follow them. And when they are active again, you'll see their content. It could be nonprofits also that you work with, schools. These could be really any sort of local account that would make sense for your fairs and events to engage with. And then, of course, using hashtags when you can, and geotags, which is just basically tagging your location. So that could be your county, that could be your specific town. If you wanted to, say you're a fair that covers several different towns, so you're not necessarily just focusing on the town that you're having the fair in, maybe it's a partnership with towns in your area, you can change the geotag to different towns, like as you're posting, just to get it in front of that audience. But again, making sure that it's clear where the actual fair or event is going to be held within your profile. And sharing user-generated content. This is just reposting individuals who tag you. If somebody shares a photo and tags you at a fair from 2023, you could take that photo in 2024, repost that to your page, tag the individual, hope that they include, come back to your page, engage with it, share it. That's user-generated content. So any content that outside individuals that do not work for you are tagging you in, that's content that you could repurpose on your own account with credits, of course, to the individual. That's what we consider user-generated content. It's one of the most impactful forms of content because it shows that people are excited to participate in your events and that they want to share and engage with you. And then, of course, just taking advantage of current trends. That doesn't just pertain to video. That could be a certain style of a graphic that people use. I know around the time of like the Oscars, there was all sorts of goofy stuff going around, and people were overlaying like images and icons from their organizations over images of like the celebrities. That's maybe not specific to fairs, but it is an example of what a trend could look like. Many of you might remember the Fiji water girl from back a few years back now. That's like, a lot of people were taking spin-offs of that and making jokes about their products. That's an example of like a trend that you could jump on. But again, it's a little harder when you're in a smaller area. So just making sure that the content that you're creating is for your regional audiences. And this staying up to date is just keeping your accounts fresh. So making sure that your about section is always being updated. if your location changes, if your contact information changes, sometimes we don't think to update the about sections on our social profiles. And then somebody will go to hit your URL for your website and it will be a broken link back to just a 404 page with nothing on it. Or they're hitting your email and it's an inactive email. Maybe it's an email of somebody that worked for your fair but no longer does. Those are things that you should definitely be aware of. Updating your about sections all the time is important. And I think that when it comes down to it, just having active links and information is going to show people that you are present and that you do have a presence online, that you're updating regularly. That also includes sharing dates and hours of operation, updating your profile imagery. So the cover photo on your account for Facebook, the profile photo on your accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and any other platform you choose to be on. Making sure that it is representative of your fair now. And even if it was, a few years back, that doesn't mean that you can't update it for the current year. And when it comes to social media, it's a lot of hand holding. So thinking about social in a way that, how am I reaching people and how am I going to earn their trust and get them to share on their own pages? The most important thing is just giving people direction. A lot of times people just want to be told what to do. And it might sound counterintuitive because a lot of times, we don't want to be told what to do, but we do this in a way that is encouraging and it is more suggestive. So at the end of your post, we'll include a call to action. It gives people a clear task. You're not saying like this post, but you could be saying, click a link to go find more information on our upcoming fair for 2024. You could direct them back to another post. You could ask them to share. So at the end of your post, you could say, we're really excited about our fair this year. We'd love for you to share with your community. Make sure you hit the share button and tag us so that we can see it. You could include a link to a direct sign up page. So if that's on your website or on Eventbrite or wherever that would be hosted, you can include a direct link to that. If you set up an event on Facebook, you can share that event onto your profile, or you can just encourage likes and comments. You could say something along the lines of, what are you looking forward to most at our fair in 2024? Comment below. What do you think we could do to improve our fairs next year? Drop a comment. What did you and your family love the most about our fair this year? There's all different ways that you can do this. It just encourages engagement and people are always excited to weigh in with their opinions and their feedback on things. So this is just a great way to encourage engagement, get your post pushed out to more people, and giving them direction in a very gentle way. One of the things that we do here is we schedule. So when it comes to posts, we use what we call a content calendar. And of course, for individual accounts, so, if you're not running 4 or 5 social media accounts, maybe scheduling on a paid platform wouldn't make sense for you. But there are many free tools as well. So Planoly, for example, has a free feature. Preview, I believe, also has a free feature. So most of them have very low price entry points if you wanted to use them for multiple platforms and users. But basically, the idea of scheduling is that you're making sure that you're putting your content out in a regular cadence. So posting often helps with your overall reach and engagement. It shows the social platforms and users that you're serious about using social media. You can schedule a week in advance. You could schedule every other week. You could schedule once a month. Just making sure that you have posts going out regularly. So instead of posting on a free week when you have, not a lot to do, and you decide, okay, well, I'll post once a day this week, but then not posting again for 3 weeks. Instead, what you could do is take those posts and schedule them ahead of time. So you're sharing 2 posts a week. And then you can share, active current content scattered throughout that time. we would recommend sharing what we would consider evergreen content. So you can share photos from previous years. You can just share general information and insights, things people can look forward to this year. And you can also schedule directly on the platforms. So for Facebook, you can schedule directly on Facebook. You don't necessarily have to, use a tool for this, but just writing it down, setting yourself calendar reminders, hey, like we want to make sure we get a social post out this week. If you have an individual running your account or if you have volunteers running your pages, just working with them to show them tools that could be really helpful in doing this. It can just make a big difference when it comes to your overall outcome for your engagement. And it also just takes a little bit of that stress off of you when you're in the moment and you realize, oh, I haven't posted in 6 weeks. It just takes a little bit off of you so that you can say, okay, I have stuff scheduled for the next 2 weeks, so I can focus on these other things that are really important. And then when things come up, you're not stressing about getting things online. So just something to think about as a tool to just kind of save you time. And now I'm going to pass it over to my coworker, Ryan, who is going to focus on paid digital, which is very closely related to social and everything else that we'll cover. So Ryan, I'll kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, shifting to the paid side of digital, what we're going to do is review some of the key terms to understand, including why we use it and the different objectives and audience segments that you can utilize to reach and build a following. So starting off with our key terms, these definitions will provide direction and guide your decision-making process on which ads to promote or which posts to promote. This will also provide a better understanding of the performance of your paid or organic posts as well. Starting off with objective, this is what your overarching goal is of your ad or post. Do you want to get clicks to the website? Do you want to reach as many users as possible? Do you want users to like your page? These are all objectives that can help guide what you want to accomplish. Engagements are likes, comments, and shares on a post, and arguably the most important metric to analyze in any campaign, doesn't matter if it's paid or organic. When a post is engaged with more often, the greater opportunity it has to appear to more users. Facebook has what's called an engagement ranking, basically for all of the paid ads that are out there, and it analyzes the engagement rate, compares it to others in your industry. So if you have something related to fairs, it knows the type of content that you're promoting, and it can compare it basically to other advertisers who are marketing also in Massachusetts. So again, it just really further emphasizes the importance of engagements, because that's how you're going to get that extra reaches. With the more users engage with it, the more often it's going to be seen. The next few are going to be pretty high level. Impressions are the number of views an ad receives, while reach is how many users saw that ad. Clicks are a range of things. They can be clicks to view the comments. They can be clicks on the photo to view it. They can be clicks to view your profile, and they can also be clicks to your website. So these also count as engagements since a user is interacting with the ad. Calls to action, also known as a CTA, that's the short abbreviated version, is the action you want users to take while looking at your ad. So posts, generally speaking, you'll see an ad on Facebook and you'll see at the bottom it says learn more. It says sign up, maybe it says view more. That is the indicator that tells the user what they can expect when they click on your ad. So if it says, if it says learn more, then generally speaking, they're going to go to more content on your website to learn about the fairs or other information. If it's sign up, that could be something for newsletters where you're bringing them to a form where they could fill out, so you can increase your pool there. And lastly, remarketing is a helpful strategy where you can reach users who have previously interacted with your page or have visited your website. And I'll go through some different campaign ideas on the coming slides so we can further contextualize these terms and how they play into the big picture. So the why we use paid social, starting with the organic side of it, when you post organically, it generally reaches about 5% of your page followers. Organic posting is still extremely crucial because you need to maintain a presence on the platform to help further legitimize your organization. So what that means is you know, you want to have more engagements on your post. So when someone clicks over to your page, they can see that you receive a lot of engagement and you have a following on your organic posts. And really, in some circumstances, it like kind of for your organization as a whole. But we've also seen that some organic posts can reach maybe even up to 30% of your followers. But it would need to be a very high engagement rate, which is how often users interact with your ads. The next thing is the extending reach to millions of users. It's a great place to reach these users with thoughtful content and calls to action. You can generate awareness by promoting ads or organic posts to users. Excuse me. You also have the ability to reach as many users as you want. Engagements, these are very important really for populating a page, as I mentioned. If a user clicks to your profile, wants to learn more information, you know, they can see you're a thought leader in the industry. They can see that you have a following. And they can also see that a lot of people have interacted with your brand and your posts. It really it makes people feel more inclined to follow your page, knowing that you know, you have a group of users who are going to look at your content, who are going to engage with it. But also when you post on a cadence too about events and attractions, so that they know that they can expect the most relevant information from you, which is really good for building a buzz in that sense. You can also have a link in your ad to increase the traffic to your website. This could be to read more information, learn about a fair, sign up for a newsletter. I mentioned that, as I mentioned before. When you want to solicit link clicks, it's because there's something on the website you want users to look at or even complete. Maybe it's a form, maybe it's a list of dates for the different fairs that you guys have. So they can be multifaceted. Video content is especially popular on platforms like Facebook and Instagram and is actually prioritized over static single images. These are great for building a buzz that could incorporate some actual imagery and video you have from your events. One thing to keep in mind though as well is that 85% of users who watch a video on social media do it without sound. So it's extremely important to have captions in there. So outside of reaching these millions of users with all these objectives, it's important to really be specific with your targeting as well. You wouldn't want to promote, you know, a regional fair to the entire state. You have the ability to select different geographies. You can layer in different interests related to that fair. You know, for an example, maybe the Franklin County Fair has a large lineup of motorsport races or derbies. You can target specifically by those interests, like literally by motorsports, literally by, you know, demo derbies, and reach those people to build a buzz and gain some interest from users. And lastly, most importantly, social media provides the flexibility for your budget. It doesn't matter how large or small it is. Well, to some extent, it matters how small it is because we really recommend a minimum of $10 per day when you're boosting a post. Or if you're doing it over a 7-day period, it could be $50. We typically don't boost posts for longer than 14 days, considering it usually saturates your market. It's the same content that people are going to continuously see. So we like to switch it up after that. And then on to our objectives here. So depending on the topic of your outreach, there are several ways to reach them, to reach really the right users and also have them act and complete the action that you want them to. These objectives are shown to users who are most likely to complete the action based on how they interact with the platform. And not to scare you by any means, but Facebook knows which type of content you interact with the most. It knows what you like based on the types of ads you see, the pages you follow, what you click on, what even type of comments you leave. I've even seen some people get targeted by things like that if you comment a lot. So some of you in here honestly might be in some of these buckets. And to give you a quick example, I know I am with content related to hockey gear. They know I get served hockey gear ads like all the time, and they know I interact with those. I follow a bunch of sports pages, so they know, like specifically with hockey though, they know to show me those relative to baseball gear or football gear, etc. Now the overview is out of the way, just to give you an idea, I've listed out these. There's really 5 major objectives that you can accomplish on the platform. Starting with awareness, these posts are shown to users who have proven to maintain recognition of brands. Facebook can often serve a brief poll to users who saw an ad and ask if they remember seeing it. These are also great for a new brand and getting more visibility and recognition of your new style. so that you can reach users with your new brand and say, hey, this is who we are. This is, you know, we've made this change, so that when people go to your profile, maybe they already follow you, they go there and they see it looks maybe completely different. So that's why it's important you could reach those users there. With a reach campaign, it's as simple as that. It's really just reaching as many users as possible as you possibly can. The caveat is the ads won't be shown more than once to a single person. So it's literally just trying to reach as many users for your budget as you possibly can. These are great for like regional PSAs if you had like a fare cancellation or something like that you needed to like in an emergency try to reach as many people. So, you know, you don't have a group of people kind of show up and, you know, kind of expecting something that there might not be. Link clicks, these show your ads to people who are most likely to click them and view your landing page. These are great for getting users to your website. As I mentioned before, it's, you know, you want them to complete an action. So when they go there, you want to have them maybe sign up for something, or you want to have them read some content, or, you know, build a buzz and get them excited about some of the attractions that are happening later this year. Engagements get you likes, comments, shares, and also link clicks. As I mentioned, it's great for populating your Facebook page with interactions. What tends to work well are stories. Maybe someone had a positive experience at the fair. I randomly thought of this earlier, but it's like maybe someone got married, and it's like maybe you want to promote, like, you know, like a feel good story of like, you know, something fun and exciting that happened. And then lastly, we have the video views, where you can show your ads to users who are most likely to watch the entire thing. Similar to engagements, they're really great for building a buzz about the fair. I mean, you know, maybe there's new attractions or shows that you want to promote to users and kind of get them excited to attend. But generally speaking, that's how video views are used, in the sense of really building a buzz. And it should be something specific related to like the fairs, like actual footage, because honestly, people can pick up on stock imagery now, and it's a little scary. And then lastly, here I have the audience segmentation. So this is how you can target the users. So you have, you know, the fundamentals of what objectives, like, do I want link clicks? Do I want, you know, do I want to reach as many people as possible? Do I want impressions? And then here is how you reach those specific people. So we'll start with the must-haves at the top there, demographics and interests. These are the things that you should always have in your campaign targeting. Demographics include the information that it basically pulls the information from your profile, such as age, location, work industry, marital status, if they're parents, if they have kids, you know, etc. With interests also includes information from your profile, but these are more based on the pages you follow. Going back to mine, I follow a lot of sports pages, so of course I get presented a lot of sports ads, and depending which specific sport I interact with, it's going to show me that more often, because it knows I interact with it, and knows I'm going to click on it, might comment, might view the comments, etc. These next few examples are really just to highlight the capabilities of the platform. It's not necessarily something that is a must-have to use, but just knowing that you have that access to do these specific tactics. The first is a lookalike audience, and this allows you to use your own data sets. And data sets basically means, you know, the followers on your page, or people who have interacted with your page, people who have interacted with your ads, people who have, you know, gone to your website. What we can do is you upload that list, or say, hey, I want to mimic this list, and I want to look for the closest 1% of people who are most similar to this audience. So that's really good for really mimicking some audiences that you have that are well performing. You can even upload an email list too, and you can even say, hey, like, I want to, of these emails that match with Facebook, whatever they log in with, what's the closest 1% of interest that someone has in their profile, because we want to show them ads. It's like I said, it's just good for really like audience expansion if you feel you've saturated your market, which in Massachusetts is a little difficult. Custom audiences allow you to tap into your website, or also, as I mentioned, an email list. You can show ads directly to the users who've interacted with your organization previously, or you could remarket to them. So with custom audiences, that's more of, you know, I'm just going to show ads to users who like my page. I want to show them ads. I want to show them that we have, you know, this new specific event coming out. So that's where you would use that. Remarketing is for people who engage. It could be with they could have visited your website. They could have visited your profile page. They could have interacted with one of your ads. And what you could do is show them ads at a frequency to people who have already seen your brand. So if you need to get like an important message out on social, it's a good tactic to stay in front of the most engaged users. Probably not the best one if you're trying to reach more users, but just something to keep in mind if you needed to reach like your most highly engaged users. And from here, oh, perfect. And then landing page experience. So updated information about the fairs. When users click on your ad and they go to your landing page, it's important to have some specific information it's actually really crucial to have this information updated. Because if you potentially had some of these from maybe even last year or maybe even the year before, people don't know of exactly when the fair is, maybe when the times are, the list of events and different attractions. Maybe you have new ones that you didn't have last year, but even parking locations and then ticket pricing too, because that will further help people plan their day, plan their trip, and gives them an idea of what they can expect once they get there. And knowing this is probably arguably the top 4 things that you want to have like kind of present when you're bringing someone to your website. The ease of accessing this information is also really crucial. If all of this information lives on a separate page and you drive people to your homepage and maybe it's just a logo and there might not be event info underneath, it's difficult for a user to find where that might be, because you really want to simplify the experience and make it as easy as possible. And with the easiest possible, these next 2 things, I don't think there are any web designers here, but just, again, 2 things to keep in mind. Having a mobile-friendly website, about 75%, I want to say 75% of Facebook traffic all comes from mobile devices. So the majority of users, even in Massachusetts also, I've seen it fluctuate up to 80% of people visiting your landing page, making sure it's mobile-friendly, because things can be, when things aren't formatted properly, they could appear, as elongated text, there's cutoff text, etc. So just making sure that, it's mobile friendly. And then of course, the last thing is Google Analytics installation. This will allow you to attribute specific engagements to your campaign. So you can also see how people are entering your website, which pages are people viewing, which type of content do they want to see the most, because then that can help you plan down the road with what you want to present on your homepage, or what's the most relevant information that people want to see. And you can really get a good idea of that based on the different pages people are browsing and viewing on your website. So with that, I'll kick it over to Erica. You're on mute.
Thanks, Ryan. That'll help. Awesome. Thanks for that intro. And we can get started talking about what is media relations and how it can help you. So there's probably a couple or many things that come to mind when you hear media relations, and it most likely has something to do with reporters or newspapers, and you're not far off. Media relations is part of a comprehensive public relations strategy, and the goal is to bolster your brand and drive home positive messages by educating the media on your organization's objectives and accomplishments. So this can be helpful. For example, if you're announcing an upcoming fair, a new partner, a new product, a new partnership, anything in that nature, and you want to share the word with your communities. So overall, media relations offers some aspect of control at a time when everybody can be a reporter, if you will, due to social media. It could protect your share of voice if done right, and it builds brand reputation and helps build strong relationships with reporters should anything arise to the occasion to tell that story. But most importantly, it can advance your internal and external goals. So jumping in, we can start with the overview of the media landscape as it currently exists and how today's media cycle can inform and shape your media relations efforts. It may or may not come to a surprise that newsrooms are shrinking and resources are dying up and journalists are being asked to do more with less. This was particularly prevalent during the COVID pandemic when tens of thousands of journalists were furloughed or laid off, but we're still seeing this happen to this day. Just today, the Boston Globe reported on GBH News announcing layoffs due to financial struggles amidst rising expenses. And unfortunately, this is not a one-off case. It's a general trend and it's impacting hyperlocal outlets at the same time as larger publications. And hyperlocal outlets are going to be those outlets that are in your community. They're smaller than the larger outlets that may be more well-known, such as the Boston Globe or Commonwealth Magazine. Those are going to be bigger outlets, including like the Boston Business Journal, versus hyperlocal outlets will be reporting on your local community news. The changing media landscape is also impacted by the rise of digital and social media, since folks are just consuming their news differently now. Stories are often posted online or on social media first, and a lot of individuals are getting their news straight from social media rather than traditional ways like print newspapers. And as Bianca mentioned, this has to do with the fact that over 60% of people worldwide have a social media account. It's the modern word of mouth, and it's often a vehicle for reporters to break the news online before expanding on it in more traditional print or media outlets. Something that has remained consistent, though, for online outlets that continue to thrive is that they're under pressure to deliver a lot of new, fresh content, and reporters are expected to produce a high volume of content around the clock. And so they're more increasingly relying on subject matter experts like yourselves to get a story written quickly and intelligently. Even though there's some outlets that are closing up, don't be discouraged, as there's still an appetite and opportunity for new stories and creative pieces to come into play. And there's also this concept of news fatigue that I'll touch on quickly, but this often refers to when consumers feel a sense of exhaustion due to the information overload from any form of media, although it's usually through social media. And this is called news fatigue. But in general, just wanted to provide some overview of how news is consumed, what the current landscape is looking like, and understanding how these changing newsrooms and structures are and how that news is consumed is imperative to think about when we're starting to pursue our own media relations efforts. And so next up, we're going to talk a little bit about reporters. And I think a common misconception sometimes are that reporters are quote unquote out to get you. And generally this is not true. But in our experience working with reporters, there is often a sense of entitlement to information because they do feel like they're the crusaders of the truth, and that if you agree to speak with them, that they can ask just about any question relevant to the subject matter. Although for the purposes that you all will be engaging with the media, this hopefully won't be the case, and they'll, they're not out to get you by any means. It'll be more evergreen pieces that they'd hopefully be working on. But there also might be a level of education that's needed to provide reporters appropriate background or context, especially as you're starting to establish those relationships in the first place. Off the record and on background conversations are incredibly helpful to provide important context that frames the story without being directly quoted. And just briefly, when we refer to something as on record or off record, so on record means that everything in the conversation can be used and attributed to the source that it's given from. Versus off the record is where information generally can't be used. And then on background is the information can be used, but is not going to be attributed directly to that source. So that providing background is particularly helpful if the reporter is a general assignment reporter, or you have not worked with them before, so there isn't that established relationship. And a general reporter covers a wide range of topics and doesn't necessarily focus on one specific beat or subject matter, versus a beat reporter who tends to focus on one subject. So for example, their beat could be community news and local events. But general reporters, as I mentioned, they do need that a little bit more education around some terms or industry jargon or specifics around certain fairs or events that you're hosting if they're not familiar with your efforts to date. But identifying the appropriate reporters half the battle in securing a successful piece of coverage. And generally, reporters have limited time and are often working on deadlines, so they prefer those speedy and reliable resources. So the high turnaround of content in a limited amount of time can sometimes lead to misprints. But hopefully when you provide that context and background, you can avoid any of those misprints or printing inaccurate information. But if a mistake is made by a reporter, they're generally receptive to making that article correction. So you shouldn't be too deterred from reaching out and asking for an article correction if there is a mistake. After all, a reporter cares just as much about their reputation as a respectable and honest reporter as you care about having that accurate information out in the world as well. Further, reporters are trained to be skeptical, so they might ask the same question multiple times or try to use some silence if you're in an interview situation against you. But remember, the more you talk, the more likely you might say something that you might regret. So you don't have to feel the need to fill the silence in between finishing your answers and moving on to the next question if you do get to a point where you're having an interview with a reporter. So just embrace the silence if it gets to that case. But ultimately, once you establish yourself as a solid source, a reporter is more inclined to reach out to you or work with you in the future. So building those relationships with the local reporters is really going to benefit your media relations efforts. And now that we laid the groundwork a little bit about what is media relations and how it works to elevate your brand, and how we work with reporters and what that current media landscape looks like, we can dive into some of those proactive media relations tactics. And as the name suggests, proactive media relations are efforts that you do proactively to share news with the media and your communities. It's also part of generating on-message and strategic exposure for both your businesses and organizations that can help manage a positive reputation while also creating a positive dialogue with key audiences. The consequences of not being proactive in media relations can mean that your business is misunderstood or misinterpreted or not even known, but it takes place in many forms. And today we're going to be touching on 3 different tactics. Although it's not an all-encompassing overview about proactive media relations, these tactics are generally going to be what will be helpful when promoting fairs and events for you all. So up first, we have pitching. And pitching is a helpful tactic to use if you have a story that's worth piquing the curiosity of your target journalist or audience. And this pitch will take place via email. And you're essentially asking a reporter if they're going to be interested in writing an article or mentioning a latest update in a regular story that they're producing. And so you're offering usually a subject matter expert who can speak to what you are pitching, or to hook the reporter on why they should write on this topic. So an example can be that you're celebrating the 50th anniversary of an upcoming fair, and that fair typically drives a large amount of traffic into town each year and contributes to the local farmers and artisans' major economic growth each year. And you want to pitch a reporter about the anniversary and how the fair impacts the community and local businesses and the local economy. And you can offer a subject matter expert to speak to the growth and success of the fair. So that could be an example of a way that you'd want to elevate your organization's mission, your brand, or even just elevate the fair that is taking place. Another proactive tactic that you can use is a press release. And so a press release is an effective tool when you're trying to share a major milestone or a change to your organization. So whether it's an exciting new hire, or you have a new product, or you just had a partnership or noteworthy event. These are all ways that you can share that information via a press release. Excuse me. And often a reporter will receive a press release and will write a story based on the information that was provided in the release. So it's really important to highlight that most relevant news and include a quote or two that a reporter can pull and use in an article. Also, linking to facts or reports, depending on what the news is that you're sharing, can be helpful to back up the claims that you're making. An example when a press release can be a good tactic can be if you, for example, switched over all of your operations to a completely energy efficient and solar powered system, and you want to share that news. And so it'll be in the release, it'll be helpful if you include some hard facts about how much energy are you saving? What is the improvements that you made? What does that mean to your business? How are you paving a new standard for the industry if you are? Just thinking about all the different pieces of information that you'd want to see in an article, if a reporter would pick up that release and they could just roll with it based off the information that you share. Lastly, another proactive tactic that you can use is a media advisory. And so a media advisory is used to invite reporters to cover an event such as a conference, a forum, a rally, or an agricultural fair. However, we wouldn't recommend inviting the media to any event unless there's something noteworthy or newsworthy that's worth capturing. So another example that we can use is if it's the weekly farmers market. sending an advisory might not be the best tool. But if you're having a local band come to the market and you are trying and giving out free samples to new products that you developed, and you are in partnership with other local artisans, a local reporter might be interested in covering the event if there is something that's new and engaging and newsworthy that is going to be taking place at the event. So overall, proactive media relations can provide an opportunity to establish or change the narratives and develop quality stories with clear timelines and plans, because sometimes that timeline and the plan and strategizing isn't always the case with reactive media relations, since there's usually a quicker turnaround time and it's not something that you proactively developed yourself. So we could touch on reactive media relations next. And simply put, as the name will allude to it, reactive media relations is being reactive and responding to media inquiries and that come directly to you. So this could be reacting to a topical news story. So maybe you receive a media inquiry to comment on an industry trend, such as how the weather is impacting your harvest this season, and a reporter is asking you for comment that they can include in a story. So in this case, there could be usually a fairly quick turnaround time in providing a reactive comment. As I mentioned, reporters are often on deadline now, especially as that news cycle is a 24/7 news cycle. So having a point person who is able to respond to the reporter in a timely fashion, making sure that you have visible contact numbers or emails on your website. So if a reporter wanted to reach out to you, it's available. These are all elements that will be imperative to make sure that you're being visible in front of the media. Often media relations can also stem from a crisis situation that can directly impact your business, and that would require a specific crisis management response. It might not be applicable for everybody, but it is important to note that, you know, being prepared for crises are important, and it does impact your media relations efforts. So a situation might occur if there are oxen at a fair and one of the animals gets loose and maybe is starting to destroy property or run amok, and a reporter catches wind of this and wants to know, what is your approach to ensuring that this animal or animals won't escape in the future? Do you care about animal safety? Are you keeping your visitors safe? So these are all, that would be more of a reactive statement. So a reporter is reaching out for you because they caught wind of certain news. It's important to be smart and strategic about responding to inquiries. So understanding first if there is a deadline that the reporter is working on, what is the information that they're trying to gather. So understanding first what the ask is going to be really important when handling reactive media relations. But it's not always just about negative things, right? So it's important to note that reactive media relations can be a successful tool as well, especially if you've established yourself as a trustworthy resource with a reporter and they're looking for an industry expert's advice. So if they are, again, looking for the industry expert and you have that relationship and they reach out for you for that request for comment, it doesn't always have to be a negative request for comment. It can be a comment that is positive, and that will just show how much of an industry or a thought leader you are in the space. And then lastly, article corrections can be a form of media relations. So if you're reading the news or you get an alert that your organization was mentioned in the press, but you notice that it's actually misstating information or something's inaccurate, you could then reach out to a reporter and ask for that article correction. So that is a form of media relations and working with the press, but it's something that did not come out proactively. You saw it and you noted that there was a mistake, and so you actively took that the direction to make the change. Awesome. So keeping in mind the different tactics that we can use for proactive media relations, now we can break down what's actually newsworthy and what characteristics that make up those events, issues, topics, and occurrences that are quote unquote news. So first we want to think about timeliness. Is it immediate? Is there current information, or is there a specific event that is newsworthy because it just occurred? It's news because it is new. Then we have proximity. So local information and events are newsworthy because they affect the people in our community and regions. So we care more about the things that happen close to home. So that would be your local news, and that's when you'd work with your local reporters or hyperlocal paper. And then we have conflict and controversy. When people argue about any ideas, policies, actions, we tend to care. Conflict and controversy tend to attract our attention by highlighting problems or differences in the community. And so those topics tend to be newsworthy. And further, we have human interest. People are interested in other people. Everybody has something to celebrate and something to share, but also maybe something to complain about. And we like unusual stories. We like people who can accomplish amazing feats or handle a life crisis because we can also identify with them. So human interest stories are really great ways to capture audiences and pique reporters' interest. And then lastly, we want to look at the relevance. People are attracted to information that helps them make good decisions. So is the content going to be relevant to your audience? So maybe somebody is curious on how to eat seasonally, or when should I start my garden? All of that information is going to depend on that information to help make decisions. And so the relevance of that is going to make it newsworthy as well. So when monitoring the media, it's extremely important to understand how your organization is viewed by the public, but it's also important to understand or just follow along with media monitoring so you can stay abreast of industry news that may or may not impact you. So if you have alerts set up, something as simple as a Google alert can be helpful, or even just typing into Google, typing into Google searches is helpful. But the alerts are great for a little bit of passive monitoring at times. And you can even set up the different cadence that you want to receive those alerts. So you can receive them on a daily basis, multiple times a day, weekly basis, etc. So depending on the volume of news that you tend to appear in or that you're interested in, you can cut down those Google alerts fairly easily. But we do recommend setting up those alerts and maybe even using a Boolean search, which is just a technique for those that are unfamiliar, and it uses keywords to narrow or broaden a search result. So for example, for the upcoming Sheep and Wool Craft Fair this weekend, a search term can be, quote, Cummington Fairgrounds, end quote, and, quote, Sheep and Wool Craft Fair, end quote. So by having both subjects or both search terms in quotes broken up by an and, you're going to receive results in your search results that have all articles that are going to say both location and both fair name. So then you can really get those search terms and monitoring down pretty specific. It's because oftentimes if you type in, let's say, for example, just, quote, Boston Agricultural Fair, maybe nothing will show up, or maybe hundreds of articles will show up. So really condensing those search terms are going to help you with that monitoring efforts. And although they're helpful, they're not always, unfortunately, all encompassing. So it's also important to check manually. So especially if you know an article is going to be running. So if you've been working with the reporter or you caught wind that a story is going to be going live, manual searches work great as well. So you can go easily onto the Telegram and Gazette's website and search in either the reporter that you were working with or potential story topic. And you can do some manual searches like that as well. Additionally, of note, we can monitor the media both online and in print. It's important to be checking both print papers because stories will run there as well, even if they're already posted online. Some papers have chosen to now do weekly print papers, so they'll have every Sunday paper. And so articles that may have popped up during the week will be then in that Sunday paper. So it's really nice just to make sure that you're staying on top of all the different ways that media and stories pop up. So although it's heavily reliant on that online presence right now, print is still here, and it's still a great way to make sure that you're keeping track of any mentions that you may have in the media. But ultimately, the goal of today is just make you more confident when you're engaging with the media. And when you're more confident, you're more comfortable. And when you're more comfortable, you'll be, and the more you're comfortable is equal to how prepared you are. So having the appropriate media materials updated and ready to go will be helpful in that effort. And ensuring, that's just ensuring you have everything from an updated boilerplate. So that's your about. If you have any job titles or bios that are on your website, making sure those are up to date. Does your mission statement currently reflect your objectives? You know, making sure that everything is up to date, just as Bianca and others were saying as well in their overviews, is that you want to make sure that your websites are a solid resource for folks to go to and to get all that appropriate information. Media lists are also a great way to be prepared. They're internal resources that you can use, and they provide contact information for to reporters. So it's typically a reporter's name, phone number, email address. You can include information or notes in a media list that talks about recent stories that a reporter writes. It's really up to you to decide how you want or how much information you want in your media list. You can have a media list that covers every reporter in Massachusetts, or you can have a specific list that covers just your local paper. It's really depending on your goal. But I think for the purpose of developing an initial media list, you want to be thinking about who are those reporters that I actually will be engaging with? What are the outlets that I would like to see more coverage of my organization? And what are the stories that I would like to show up in? And so really thinking strategically about who you're including on your media list, because it doesn't make, it's not best practice to just blast out let's say a pitch to 50 reporters who aren't even covering anything that you're pitching them on. So if you're totally lost about how to find a reporter information or where to even begin to develop a media list, please just drop those questions in the chat or in the Q&A, or reach out to us, reach out to Fran, and we can help you. We can help develop, help you gear you in the right direction to get those lists going. Another tool that can help you to feel prepared and be prepared is having a press kit. Although I just want to preface by saying this is not necessary by any means to have. Especially it's not something that you need to carry around in your pocket to have at fairs or events. It can live on your website, but again, it's not necessary. It's just an extra tool that you can have to feel prepared. So a press kit in its whole is just a prepackaged set of promotional materials that provide information and resources for reporters. So it's really quick information that's put all in one place for ease of use. But what you're going to put in that press kit is going to vary depending on your organization and the information or facts that you have to deal with. There are some essentials, so you're going to want your organization's story and mission in there and any facts that are relevant. But it can also be helpful to include any really great images that are a high resolution or any recent media coverage all in one place. So it can be just a quick one-pager, just so a reporter or whoever is looking to just learn a little bit more, they can easily find it. So you can stick that on the footer of your website, or if you have a location specific to contact information on your website, that could be helpful to include, but it's not necessary to develop an entire whole web page specifically for a press kit, nor is it necessary to have one necessarily, but it is a helpful tool to be prepared if you want to kickstart and to really start driving home those media relations efforts. And I know that we covered a lot, but ask any questions, please. We're happy to help. We're here to help you. But I will kick it over now to Jamie to walk through some branding.
Thanks, Erica. So now we'll cover the last part of the presentation, which is branding and creative. Typically, when a brand is created, a lot of careful research and background research goes into forming this visual identity in order to resonate with the target audience. So as we move on to the next slide, we can kind of break down what that means. So a lot of times when I'm talking about branding, especially with people who might not be as familiar with it, or maybe are, but they've never thought of it from this lens, I always like to give the example of the brand Coca-Cola, the soda brand. Immediately what comes into people's head is that red color, the type of logo that they have, the font that they use. People immediately are able to recognize it. So that shows that brand is doing great branding. And that's hopefully what you can do across all of your fairs and events, is create that recognition, because a brand does extend far beyond those colors and fonts. It tells your overall story as an organization and expands on your identity. It answers the question of who you are and your why. So parts of branding include your logo, color palette, fonts, and the type of photography or imagery and graphics that you use. Moving on from the graphics on the next slide, it helps break down kind of what that would look like. For a lot of the fairs, you guys have great imagery from photos that are taken during certain events, which is great to share on social media. Like Erica said earlier, for human interest stories, people love people. So they always love seeing faces on social media or feeling like they can connect to what's being posted online. But when it comes to creating graphics, you don't necessarily need to have an art background or be a professional artist to create them. In 2024, there are a lot of great platforms that exist out there for you to use or others within your organization. One of the platforms that we like to recommend is Canva, and Canva is very user-friendly. It has the option for you to create graphics that are consistent for platforms. So if you go into Canva, it has options for artboards specific to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those different digital platforms that your organization might be on. But more importantly, what Canva also lets you do is stay consistent with your branding. You're able to upload your brand kit or guidelines directly into Canva. When working with a lot of different organizations, you tend to see style guides sometimes, which is just a fancier word for a way to keep track of your color palette, your fonts, and your which ways you should use your logo and which ways you should not. Some organizations who have a lot of other things going on, like organizing events at fairs or fairs in general, don't necessarily have time to pull together a formalized brand style guide. So for that, we just recommend, keeping a running list of what colors are we using, what colors maybe aren't we using, or what font are we sticking with, just so that we can stay consistent throughout graphics that we are creating that will be shared on our website or on social media or even in print. One thing that also is great about Canva is that they have preloaded templates for you to use. So if you're not really sure where to even get started, but you want to post about an event, Canva, all you have to do is type it into the template bar and it will populate a bunch of different options for you to use and build off of. If there is a certain style that you do like or template that you do like, an easy way to continue to use the same template across social media on a variety of days or months, but not making it feel like you're reusing it, is to rotate your color palette, change up your wording, and change maybe your logo placement on the graphic. Those are all ways to help keep it fresh while also staying consistent and on brand. An important thing to note about these graphics, though, is that we don't overload them with text. The way that the algorithm is across a lot of digital platforms is it's not very friendly towards graphics that have a lot of text. So, keeping the text simpler on those graphics and putting the majority of the information you want to get across in the caption is always a great solution to that. Building off of creating graphics, Bianca sort of mentioned this earlier, is the crop ratios. So each platform is very different for social media and requires different crop sizes for the best usage. So Instagram is a square, the easiest way to think about it. And so it's just a square, whereas Instagram Reels or Facebook and Instagram Stories and TikTok, those are a 9:16 ratio, which basically means, I like to say the easiest way to think about it and visualize it is that it's the size of your phone screen. And then for Facebook and Twitter photos, that's different. It's a 16:9 ratio, which is just the landscape rectangular shape. And I know at first this can seem very overwhelming. You're building a post for social media and then you're like, oh my goodness, I have to resize for all the different platforms too. That's going to take me so much time. If you are using a platform like Canva, there's an easy option to resize per platform. So it will do it for you, and you might just have to adjust a few things here or there to make sure that the image still looks good or the way that you intended it, which is a great option for time saving, and also for those of us who might not be as familiar with building graphics, it's really great in helping assist with that. And then this page just shows examples that we have created for Mass Grown and the fairs to help promote in print. So looking at this, you can see the logo, its consistent color usage throughout. We're focusing on photography. We're using consistent image styles in the photography, as well as consistent fonts throughout. So if you saw a full page ad in a magazine and then you were looking in a different print and you saw a half page or a quarter page ad, you could easily make the distinction that this is all for one brand because they all have similar elements across. And then this slide just breaks down the content types. So there are so many different platforms, which means there are so many different content types, and there's so much different content that you can post. And I think what's important to figure out per platform, and Bianca kind of touched on this earlier, is that, you know, our attention span sometimes of our audiences can be so short. It's important to figure out what content is working best on each platform in order to get your viewers' attention. So a static post can be posted across all different platforms. So this is photography or graphic that you create. And then there's also an option for carousel. So that means posting a series or multiple images or graphics all at once, which on Instagram, your users can slide through. And typically, you know, if you're posting a recap of an event or things like that, a carousel is always a great option. Stories are available to be posted on Instagram and Facebook. There's a lot of different features on stories that you can utilize, including an interaction tool. So you can ask questions and people can submit questions, or you can do a true or false, things like that to get engagement from your followers. And stories last once you post them for 24 hours, but it's important to note that you can on Instagram pin these stories to your profile in terms of saving them to a highlight. And say, you know, for your fair, you posted a bunch of stories and you want to save them under maybe you call it 2024 and you do it by year. You can save those so that they'll last on your profile and you can go back and look at them and they won't disappear after the 24-hour window. There's also an option for long form video. This is great if you have a YouTube channel or, you know, to post a long form video that might have been created from one of your events. Short form video is super successful on obviously TikTok, but also Instagram Reels in terms of, you know, you could use it to tease your fair or do a countdown or post highlights or snippets from content that you have gathered. It tends to do really well across those platforms. And then consistency is key. You have definitely heard me say consistency a lot of times throughout this presentation so far, but that's because it is so important when it comes to branding and your visual identity. Branding should be reflected across all of your accounts, and this includes in your visual image, but also in your tone. So the way that you write captions that go along with these graphics or images that are being posted, or even taglines or things that are used in print, it's important to make sure that your tone staying consistent throughout all so that it aligns with your overall branding. And, you know, consistency across social media, but also in print is really important. And Bianca noted earlier that one way to keep consistent across your platforms is having maybe your profile image be your logo, or having all your profile images or cover images being the same, so that when someone is looking for your account on social media and maybe they do follow you on Instagram but not on Facebook, and they see the image and they make the connection, they know right away that it is you and it's not another account. And then the last slide that we do have shows just more examples of ads that we have created. These are not print ads, these are digital. So they're for a different format. There's things you would see maybe on a website or an app. And although they are for a different platform, we wanted to include these just to show you how we have stayed consistent throughout print and digital and how important it is because of brand recognition. And then with that, we have reached the end of our presentation. So we did want to say thank you all for attending and now open it up to questions.
Awesome. It looks like we have some questions in the chat.
Yep, so we have some questions here, and for any of you who are still thinking of questions that you might have, please feel free to drop them as we go through these. The first question is, should you create events for entertainment at your fair, not just for the fair in general? I'm going to interpret this as like events, if you're having maybe a concert one of the days of your fair, or a certain contest a certain day of your fair. I would say yes, if it's an event that draws a big enough crowd, and if it's an event that requires an extra ticket, that I would say for sure makes sense. I think it just kind of depends on the size of the event itself and where you wanted to put it. It doesn't hurt to have multiple, just making sure that it's very clear that it is a part of your fair is something that you want to keep in mind when you're actually like creating graphics or posts around it. And I think when it comes to, so we don't really have a great answer on the emails. I think I can let Ryan touch on this too when he jumps in with the advertising question. But in my experience, it just kind of depends on what platform you're using and how many users you're hitting per month. I think an email list of over 2,000 probably will require some sort of a paid subscription. That's just from what I've seen. As we've kind of discussed on the side here, I think it just, as you get more subscribers, you know, they're gonna rope you into paying at some point. So just look at different platforms if the one you're using isn't really working for you. And then the only other thing I was going to touch on is the presentation. So yes, we will be sharing our training with the Mass-Grown team. We will also be sharing our Q&A roundup at the conclusion of all of our presentations that we're doing for everybody. So Fran will make the decision on how those go out, but feel free to ask if you want more specifics on how that will be delivered. We will be sharing, at least with the team, the Q&As, so that you have all of those answers, and I imagine the copy or the video as well.
For the email question, I would recommend looking into HubSpot. The one thing I don't know is if there's a limit for how many emails you can have without having to pay. And sometimes it depends on how many people you actually have in your email list. You have to pay per person or per email. So I would look into HubSpot. I'm sure there's a few others as well. We just don't have like the most experience with the paid version of those platforms. For the question, it was how much money of your advertising marketing budget should you spend on newspapers compared to radio and social media? I would say there's a lot of variables in the question, but it really depends. Generally speaking, 20% is a safe number to land at for print allocations, but it also depends on how large your budget is and how much it costs to place those print ads. You know, if you had a 10K budget, I think you could for sure get away with a couple of placements around $2,000. Radio could maybe be 20 to 35%. And then the rest really could go to social, because social is really such a community-centric platform that, you know, when you have like this local level type of posts that go out to people, like it just resonates more with them. If your budget was like 20K, you could go a little higher, but it also depends though on how long you're marketing for, because you don't want to squeeze your budget too tight. So there's a few different variables that could go into that, but if you want to provide, if you are comfortable providing your budget, I'm more than happy to give you a recommendation there.
Great. And then there's a question in the chat that asks about the best way to get emails of reporters that you want to send a press release to. And it might be a little or it might seem intuitive, but just Google, honestly. It more often than not, I would say 8 out of 10 times you're going to be able to find a reporter's email just through a quick Google search. So if you are looking for a specific reporter, if you go on the outlet that you are trying to target, you can look through their news and try to find a reporter that seems to be mirroring the beat that you're trying to get covered. So if you are searching on the actual outlet's website, you can just type in that reporter's name if you know it. Often they will provide that contact information. If not, they will provide a general news desk contact and email. And so you can always pitch to that general contact, but we do recommend trying to find a specific reporter versus just that general news outlet name email address. But if you can't find a specific reporter's email, you can just reach out to that general news desk email. But just simply Googling the reporter's name, oftentimes their socials will pop up. So if they're on X, you can send them a quick DM and they're responsive that way. And then for another question is just about if we have any copies or examples of some pitches, press releases, and media advisories. And I'm sure that maybe Fran also potentially has some that MDAR's used in the past, but we can provide some templates by chance, maybe some guidance and guidelines. But specific pitches, I think, would be a little bit tricky just because we don't know necessarily the nature of what is being pitched. Same thing for press releases and media advisories. But once we pull together that Q&A that we mentioned and all of the roundup materials, we can see what we could do with trying to provide a little bit more clarity or templates, if you will.
So there are a few more questions on social media here. The first being, why are hashtags less effective than they used to be? I think the answer to that is twofold. So initially, when Instagram first came out, there was less competition for hashtags. Now you're seeing a lot of competition for specific tags. Additionally, a lot of these platforms have become pay to play. So there's a lot less organic engagement overall than there used to be. It used to be very heavily, hashtags used to be very, organic used to be a lot easier to get engagement for. But as of now, it's just changed a little bit just based on the landscape of social media. That's why using niche hashtags that are a little bit more specific can be a lot more helpful and can get you a lot more eyeballs on your posts. They're absolutely still relevant to use. I think you should absolutely use them in all of your posts. But it's just a matter of using them in an efficient way. And I think when it comes to, so we do a lot of crisis work here. So we're very used to dealing with negative commentary, dealing with backlash on social media. So this question, I will read it so that those of you who don't see it in the chat will understand what I'm answering. Any advice for responding to social media and Facebook comments on posts that are unhelpful, adversarial, or opinionated? And is there a downside to hiding comments of this nature? That answer kind of depends. So depending on what, or I should say, depending on how hostile a comment is, if a comment threatens anything legal, if a comment is, if it contains like curse words or things that you absolutely would not want on a post, there is no harm in hiding those types of posts. We generally do not recommend blocking or reporting users unless there's a real, a really strong reason to do so. I also don't think all pages have that option. And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is if it's just a negative comment about someone who had a bad experience, just apologizing and responding to that, we try not to hide things like that just because that kind of feels a little bit disingenuous. Unhelpful comments, kind of hard to broach that because I'm not really sure what would be considered unhelpful. But if it's a normal comment that makes sense, even if it doesn't reflect you the way you want it to, just responding in the way that you want to be seen is really important. And I think that can be a good way to show who you are and how you care about the community and the way that you respond. So I know that that's not that's not an exact answer. It really depends on the comment itself. As I mentioned, if anything ever is, if someone threatening legal action, if it's something that's just like so outlandish that it doesn't make any sense, it's just there to get you riled up. Those types of comments, I think, we would say yes, just hide them. And if it we try to recommend responding to all comments. So if there's ever a time where you are not sure like how to respond, just thinking about it, how can you respond in the most neutral way possible? We never ever want to argue with people in comments, especially as an organization. So just keeping that in mind when you're answering. Just take them comment by comment, because it really just depends on the nature of a specific comment, how you would respond to it. And we, with our crisis practice, that's something that we do a lot, where it's like we could have a post with 100 comments and we have to treat each one differently. So just using your best judgment and never ever being combative back is key, even if you don't agree. And the next question for social media is, I've worked in social media in several industries. What do you think is the biggest adjustment to handling social for agricultural fairs? So I'm not sure what industries you've worked within, or the nature of like where you were selling or what their presence is. Where the agricultural fairs, the footprint is relatively small on the scale of, thinking about the entire audience available on social media. So I think you have to think of it that way. Your audience you're looking for, is within a certain number of states, sometimes even within certain like mileage. So thinking about it in terms of how you reach individuals in your neighborhoods that are absolutely going to be at your fair, including those who could drive to your fair when we're promoting posts. That's something to keep in mind too. You never want to promote to a national audience. Nobody, I won't say nobody because you never know, but someone's unlikely to be flying from Wyoming to attend a small fair. So I think that really focusing on the people in your region is very important. And just making sure that when you're creating posts that it's very clear what your location is, using geotags where you can, hashtags where you can for specific locations, so that you're reaching the audience that you want to be reaching and you're not necessarily hitting people that you don't. So just thinking of things on, you might have a pretty big audience within the state of Massachusetts, maybe even New Hampshire, maybe even people from Maine, in other neighboring states who could drive in, but you won't necessarily be able to get people from states that are outside of the Northeast. So just keeping that in mind when you're creating content, that would be the biggest difference, I think, if you were working in industries that had audiences all over the country, possibly even internationally, right? It's different in the way that we message things, the way that we promote content, just so that you can make sure that you're getting received by the right areas. And I hope that answers that question. But if you need anything more specific, feel free to drop it into the questions.
If I could add on to just a little bit onto this, guys, I think that there's one thing that everybody's forgetting is that you can reach out to each other. I mean, if you're in a local fair, and I'm taking, for example, and Scott, I believe you're with Sterling, and reach out to Bolton. You're right next door. If you need a contact, if you need media contacts, you need, reach out to each other, build off of each other. You've got a lot of experience within each other's fairs, and you may be able to take that and build off. Maybe they've had a situation, whether it's a negative or a positive, that you may be able to get a response from them and build on that for each other. Also, you may be able to reach out to the Mass Fair Association as well. They may have the experience there that may be able to help you and save you some time. And I think, Scott, it might have been you that asked about the link to these. Yes, we do plan on sending these out. My hope is I don't know how, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know how to send them yet, but I will find that out. And we're gonna send them out to everybody that participated, as well as we hope to even post them on to our website. So they'll be accessible to everybody. And also the intent is after the third presentation on June 12th, we're gonna combine all the questions and then make it accessible to everybody. So yes, they will be available. So I hope I hit everyone's questions on the rest of them. So thank you.
I can take the question about the budget. I have the budget you mentioned is 15K a year. It's a 4-day fair, once a year. So if it's 15K, I would say for print, while I have you on the call, I would say I'm going to make a media plan for you right now. I would say 3 to 5K for something like that. Maybe a month or two before the fair, so that you can get your awareness out there, because you really don't want to do it a month before, because you got to think of circulation. So that's why you want to do it like out a little bit. For radio, pricing varies. I could imagine you could spend maybe 3 to 4K on that. Similar to print, you could also make it closer to the event as well. And then with social, that could fluctuate. That could be 5K, that could be 7K if you wanted to. But generally speaking, what we're doing like for Mask Grown right now is we're marketing 3 months up to all the event dates. First month is general awareness. Here's the dates. The second month is specific events or attractions to get people excited, build a buzz. And then third month is maybe a countdown, save the date, get ready, type of build, continuing really to build excitement there. I hope that answers the question.
That's all of the questions I believe that we have in here. So if anyone has any last minute questions, please feel free to drop them now. If you think of them after the fact, you can always pass them along and we can incorporate them into our questions later. We were happy to host all of you today. I think we hope this was very helpful. And we are always available to answer questions. We'll work with Fran to get all of those included in our wrap-ups. And we are excited for all of you and your fairs this year. We hope that this helps you and your attendance numbers are able to go up, and this helps you with your engagement overall online. But again, yeah, thank you all. We really appreciate your time, and we hope that this was helpful.